Hi, everyone. I'm Alyssa Mito Pusey, an editor at Charlesbridge. And with me today is Chris Barton, the author of several amazing picture books, including New York Times bestseller Shark vs. Train, a Cybert Honor winner, The Dayglow Brothers, Orbis Pictus honoree, Dazzler Ships, and Whoosh, Lonnie Johnson's super soaking stream of inventions. Chris lives in Austin, Texas, where he's joining us today to discuss his brand new nonfiction picture book, Glitter Everywhere. Welcome, Chris.
Well, thank you so much. I'm glad to be here to talk about this book. It's still pretty much brand new, and I have yet to grow tired of talking about it. I'm thrilled to do this.
I love talking about this book. So, a book about glitter. Where did this idea come from, Chris?
So this is an idea that did not start with me, although it did start with a couple of my previous books. Um, my first book for Charlesbridge, my first book, period, which came out 14 years ago, was The Dayglow Brothers, which was a story about how those super bright, orange and yellows and pinks and greens that so bright they glow in their ordinary daylight. That's how those colors were invented. That's what The Dayglow Brothers was about. So my book was about their inventors. And then my second Charlesbridge book was Whoosh, about the invention of the Super Soaker water gun. So in late 2018, there was a big full-page article in the New York Times about how glitter is made. And Harold Underdown, who had previously been with Charlesbridge before I got involved, saw that article, thought this sounds like a Chris Barton book, and reached out to Charlesbridge and said, this sounds like a Chris Barton book. And Charlesbridge reached out to me and said, would you like to make a book about glitter? Now, my first book, The Dayglow Brothers, before Charlesbridge came along, I got 23 rejections on that book. So I've learned over the years that when a publisher says, would you like to make a book about such and such? The answer pretty much always is yes, I believe I would, because that's a lot more fun than getting 23 rejections.
Well, we are so glad you said yes. But then, that was just the start of a idea, and then you had to actually make the book happen. So I know you did as with all your books, you did a ton of research for Glitter Everywhere, and you interviewed a lot of people. So can you tell us about your adventures in research?
So I did do a ton of research, and this is way beyond anything I'd done previously. The previous most sources I'd ever used was a little over 100. For this one is 155 sources in my bibliography. So the number one source was that New York Times article. That was a great starting point because there were a few key names that I was able to begin using for research. And a lot of times you start just by doing Google searches, but also I like going to the University of Texas library and using Nexus and Factiva, using those search tools so I can get access to a whole lot more information from a lot more dependable sources. And along the way, I got a sense of who I wanted to talk with, including a couple of glitter manufacturers based in New Jersey, neither of whom was especially interested in talking with me. And this had been kind of a theme in the New York Times article, and has been a theme since then. Whether it's modesty, whether it's secrecy, for whatever reason, whether it's a sense of competition because these two top glitter manufacturers are less than an hour away from each other in New Jersey, they just don't want to say much about themselves. So even though I thought, well, maybe if I go up there in person and say, hey, here I am, want to talk? The answer was still no. But since I was up there in person, I was able to go to the state library, the New Jersey State Library in Trenton. I was able to spend time at local public libraries, at the Fashion Institute of Technology Library in New York, and the American Museum of Natural History Library. And so that's how I accumulated all these sources. Although when I do these research trips, I'm often in such a hurry. I don't have time to really process what I'm gathering. So I'll take lots and lots of photographs and look at them later when I'm at home. Well, this was in August of 2019 when I did that research trip, and I was home a whole lot in 2020. Maybe you were too. And so I had lots of time to get really familiar and really dig into all those sources I got and double check and triple check and make sure I had my facts right. And I had as many sources as possible for individual pieces of information. That's how I got to 155 sources. But I also had a chance to reach out to and talk with or correspond with a lot of fascinating people in a whole lot of different disciplines you might not think would have anything to do with glitter.
Can you give us some examples?
Well, just in the E's, you've got a team of Egyptologists, 2 entomologists, and an etymologist. And I talked with someone at the FDA trying to get a better understanding of what edible glitter is. Now, is edible glitter food, which kind of dump them. Turns out the answer finally came back that when edible glitter is on food, it is food, but when it's not on food, it isn't food. By which I think they mean if I have a glitter cupcake, a cupcake with edible glitter on top, and I eat the cupcake, they have considered that I've eaten food. But if I just take a tablespoon and get a big scoop of edible glitter and eat that by itself, as far as the Food and Drug Administration is concerned, I have not just eaten food.
And if I did a glitter project and I sprinkled edible glitter all over paper, that would not be food.
That would not be food because you didn't eat it. And
right.
if you eat craft glitter, that doesn't make it food just because you ate it. You've just eaten something you should not eat.
Right. Don't do it, anyone.
Do not do it.
All right. So, Chris, so you provided all sorts of research documentation and images and passages but my favorite visual prop that you provided was the shoe. Can you talk about that and share that?
You mean this shoe? So what we have here is a glitter covered shoe with characters from my books on there. There's Fire Truck and Dragon that's actually a shark right there. The dragon is over here. So Fire Truck and Dragon and Shark versus Train. And there's a little tiny glitter covered super soaker that I don't know if you can see it, but it's up there. So why do I have a glitter covered shoe with characters from my books on them? There is so in Mardi Gras, in New Orleans, you've got these various Mardi Gras crews where they will toss out. They have what's called a signature throw. Each crew has a signature throw that they will toss out from their Mardi Gras float. And one of these crews is the crew of muses. It's an all-women's crew. And one of the members is a librarian named Solene Holmes. The crew's specialty is glitter-covered shoes. So they toss these glitter-covered shoes from their floats. Solene's and Alicia's, their focus is that they love making children's book themed glitter covered shoes because they're school librarians. And so they made me this shoe with the characters on there. They also, Solene had written a couple of articles about the crew of muses and about Mardi Gras. So I was able to learn a lot from her. I learned about another crew. I think it's the crew of Zulus. Their signature throw is glitter covered coconuts. And in my research, I learned that at some point in the past, for insurance purposes, the Zulus had to hollow out their coconuts. They had to stop throwing solid glitter covered coconuts. So I think that's probably a good choice.
Awesome. So Chris, as it's becoming clear, glitter is a funny and fun topic. And I love how the voice in the book is, really bold and quirky. It makes me laugh. And especially when, it addresses the reader, me directly. Yeah. So could you share an example of that voice with us? Maybe a favorite passage from the book?
Sure. And I love this passage because, it makes heavy use of the word glitter. And the word itself, I think, is fun to say. And it's hard to be super serious about a subject when its name is glitter, when it's so fun to say. So here's an example I think gives a good sense of the voice in this book. In the United States in the early 1900s, mica was used in greeting cards, artificial snow, and holiday ornaments. Manufacturers cut mica, metal, and paper into tiny pieces they called flitter. No, not glitter, not yet. At that time, flitter was the more common name for flecks of shiny mica and whatnot. Sure, flitter was glitterish. You could even say that flitter glittered. But for now, that shimmer mainly came from flitter, not glitter.
I just love that. And would you mind reading the first page of the book?
Sure.
That's one of my favorites.
Yes, and that's the page. As soon as I had hard copies of this book, or one hard copy of this book, and I would take it to school visits with me, I would, in addition to showing off the cover, I would read the first page, and it got a great response. It begins, glitter is lots of things: tiny, clingy, colorful, loved, not loved, and believe me, we're going to talk about all of that. And that really gets to the fact that, unlike with so many of my other books, this topic for this nonfiction book, it's a topic that people already if they don't, even if they don't know a lot about it, they know how they feel about it. People tend to feel very strongly one way or the other about glitter. Either they love it or they hate it. And I love that we were able to, and on the very first page, address both the love and the lack of love for glitter.
Yeah, it certainly sparks some big emotions for people. So staying on that theme, so as bright and sparkly as glitter is, it does have a downside. In the book, you point out that glitter is literally microplastic, micro
Right.
and plastic. So what are some of the environmental concerns around glitter?
Well, the concerns are that, if you introduce something that's not natural into into ecosystems, that's going to cause trouble. It will disrupt the plant life that small animals rely on, for their food. It will be mistaken as food by aquatic life, and that has a damaging effect up the food chain. But also, you know, there's a huge problem of plastic in our oceans now. Glitter itself, tiny, tiny, tiny portion of that great big plastic problem. You toss one tire into the Pacific Ocean and have it break down. That equates to a whole bunch of glitter. But it still gets across the idea, the book does, of we can be more responsible in what sort of plastic, or whether we introduce plastic into the environment. And I give the examples of various types of biodegradable glitter that are now being developed.
Right, that was so interesting to me. And I mean, the fact that, we're using science to solve this problem, and the biological glitter that's being developed is still in development. So we couldn't use it on our book, but we did have a solution to that.
Yeah, we got the sparkly cover this glitter everywhere, ironically, is one of the seemingly few places that there is no glitter. There is no actual glitter used in the creation of glitter everywhere. And when I tell audiences that, I say, I know to some of you, I must say, I'm sorry. To the rest of you, you're welcome. Which even elementary school kids, they give me a round of applause for that. Even if they just said that they love glitter, they know that they should applaud the fact that there is no glitter, or maybe they actually feel that they're happy that there's no glitter. Maybe even if they love it, they don't necessarily want to come into unexpected contact with it.
Right. And it still looks amazing.
It
That
looks
glitter
amazing.
look-alike.
And the art throughout Chopper Bot's art
Oh my
throughout,
gosh.
even though there's no actual glitter, she still manages to convey this glittery sense throughout the book.
Yeah. I just loved working Chaya. She's so smart and creative. And when she got the text, she was like, okay, we're talking about so many different topics here. There's environmentalism and science, history, biography, a little bit of politics, everything. So how do you develop visual continuity in such a wide-ranging book? Do you remember that?
I remember being glad it wasn't my problem.
We talked it over with Chaya, and so we were brainstorming. What about talking birds? Could they kind of go throughout the book and give it that sense of consistency?
And it wasn't that outlandish that we would have talking birds, because we do have an illustration in there of a hummingbird and showing how hummingbirds, like glitter, are iridescent, and how when you look at it from slightly different angles, it brightens and dims and brightens again. So it was not really that far out to have a talking bird. I mean,
Right,
it's far out to have a talking bird, but we're at the brainstorming phase of things.
Right. And, your voice was so big in the book that, to bring in talking characters seemed like it might conflict a bit. So I love where we ended up, where Chaya ended up. She created these 3 kid characters. And if you follow them throughout the book and pay attention to their facial expressions and body language, you'll see that they have feelings about glitter, and they express them, and those feelings change throughout the book. So there's a wonderful visual subplot.
Yeah, we've got our glitter lover, our kid who's kind of glitter neutral, and our science loving glitter skeptic. And they never have any dialogue. And I love pointing out to people who ask, what kind of interaction did the illustrator and I have in making this book? And I point out, because they may not know, that often, typically in making picture books, the author and the illustrator work separately. The author does their part of the job, and then for the most part kind of tosses the words over this invisible wall so the illustrator can do their job. And when I wrote the text, when we finalized the text for Glitter Everywhere, there was nothing in there about three kids. These three kids are purely a visual creation that I never would have come up with. And if the illustrator's job was only to, you know, to literally put down in pictures, you know, to take dictation basically and put in pictures what was in the text, we wouldn't have that element. We would have nowhere near the book that we ended up with.
Yeah, we had a fantastic team on the book, and shout out to John Simeon, the designer and art director who worked with Chaya directly. I mean, the book is just such a visual pleasure and feast. So, and at the very end, when Chaya sent in her illustrator's note, that's when we found out that she was obsessed with glitter as a kid. She is the perfect illustrator for this book.
And I would have thought that was, you know, a requirement at the get-go to have an illustrator involved in the project. Want someone who's, you at least want to find out what their feelings are about glitter. Make sure they're not an anti-glitter saboteur.
Oh, so yeah, that brings me to you, Chris. After all your work on the book, how do you feel about glitter?
I have complicated feelings about glitter. I'm neither a glitter lover nor a glitter hater. I know too much about it to fall squarely into one camp or another. I mean, personally, I try to come into contact with as little of it as possible. You know, the one notable exception is probably, you know, glitter cupcakes and glitter pancake syrup. I feel like my research on that aspect of the book still isn't quite finished. I need to continue doing my studies. But yeah, you know, loose glitter, glitter from ornaments or greeting cards. Now I'm happy not to come into contact with that. But I also know that glitter brings a lot of people joy. Glitter tends to be associated with happy occasions or happy activities. And so people who love glitter, you know, or humans love sparkly, shiny things. And so that's just part of who we are as a species. And we're also a very clever type of animal. And if there's something that we love and we recognize that, you know, there are downsides to it, we can come up with better ways of doing that. We can find ways to sparkle more responsibly.
So finally, Chris, who is this book for? What do you hope kids get out of it?
Well, this book is clearly it's for people who already have a passion for glitter. I think anybody loves learning more about something that they're already interested in. But this is also for kids, you know, whether they love glitter or not, even if they don't like glitter. It's for kids who are curious about the way the world works, curious about history, curious about science, curious about the environment, curious about the toys and other products that surround them, curious about why, you know, motorboats and motorcycles and bowling balls sparkle. You know, it's when I write a nonfiction book, I'm typically writing about something that I don't already know a lot about because I want to learn more. I'm curious about how some part of our world got to be the way that it is. And I think there are lots of kids out there like that who want to know more about the everyday parts of their lives, whether it's, you know, those daylight fluorescent colors, whether it's where that super soaker water gun came from, or what makes, you know, this glittery object or this glittery art craft or this glittery cupcake they're about to eat, what makes it do that.
Thank you, Chris. Thanks so much for chatting all things glitter. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. Make sure to check out Glitter Everywhere, available now.